Well, hello, everybody, and thank you for joining us here for our monthly webinar, our free webinar on HIPAA and cybersecurity and HIPAA for humans here at Matterfarm. I'm Michael Herrick, and I welcome you all. I'm glad to have you all here with me again today. Sorry, I'm starting late. I usually pride myself on starting on the dot, but I was working right up to the last minute to put together some cool resources that I'm going to be sharing with you, some downloads and some links that I want to share with you. And I've been busily trying to get them integrated into this webinar platform. So I was using the time wisely, getting ready for you guys, and I've got some new stuff to share with you. So we'll give that a try here in the webinar platform. And I hope you'll enjoy the stuff that I will be sharing with you at the end of the webinar. Hello, everybody. Please warm up the chat box for me here. I'd love to hear from you. I'd love to hear who's here, and give me some feedback. How's the video? How's the audio quality? Just give me a thumbs up. Are we looking good? Sounding good? Hey, Mary. Good to have you here with us again, Mary. Mary's one of our regulars. Always love to have Mary here. Looking forward to your questions. Got feedback that the sound is good. Thanks for that. Well, we're starting late. Let's jump right in. We're going to talk today about one of my favorite topics. I talk about this all of the time. And one of the reasons I love talking about passwords is because it's also a topic of great interest to everybody. We can talk about cybersecurity and penetration testing and HIPAA compliance, and it's a little bit abstract and theoretical. But boy, when you talk about passwords, that goes to the heart of our daily life, doesn't it? We all deal with passwords, and I think we're all frustrated with passwords. So that's what we're going to be talking about today. And what I'm going to be sharing with you today is some ideas for a new kind of password policy. We're going to talk about this. There's been a lot of bad advice given about passwords. And a lot of us at our healthcare organizations, we have HIPAA policies around password management as required by HIPAA. But a lot of our HIPAA policies have that old school bad advice about passwords. So I'm going to be sharing with you the new, modern, evidence-based password policies that we recommend now for our clients. These are recommendations that we make when we conduct a HIPAA risk assessment for our healthcare clients. And at the end of the webinar, stick around to the end because I'm going to be sharing with you a free download containing our model policy language that you can take, swipe, and adapt for your organization to create a new documented password policy for your organization that follows the best practices that I'm going to be sharing with you today during this webinar. Hey, Jim, good to have you here with us. Glad to have you. I think we got a small group today, but always happy to do these webinars, and I'm glad to have everybody here. Please share the word, folks. Let people know about our webinars. We'd love to see more attendance here. I think we're sharing lots of good information and some free resources for you today that I'd love to also be sharing with your coworkers and your colleagues. There will be a recording of this presentation available afterwards, and you'll be able to share that as well. So thanks again. Let's dive in and talk about how to make passwords that work for human beings. Passwords, as I think we all know, are one of the biggest vulnerabilities at every company. They are the weak link in many of our security systems. Many of our most sensitive systems with our most sensitive data, including PHI, protected health information, many of our systems are protected by nothing more than one password that was chosen by one user who was untrained, tired, worn out, and burnt out when they chose that password, or when they reused the password that they've been using for the last 20 years. So passwords, one of the biggest vulnerabilities at any organization. Not coincidentally, one of the biggest headaches of modern office life. As I said, my password talks are always very popular. People really respond to them because passwords are notorious as the big annoying headache in our digital lives today. We all are dealing with so many passwords, so many password rules, so many requirements about passwords that change periodically, requirements for how we construct our passwords. Every system is different, on a different schedule for forcing us to reset our passwords. It's maddening. In fact, it's humanly impossible to manage all of the passwords that people manage in a secure and HIPAA compliant manner. It's actually humanly impossible. So we're going to talk about ways to adjust those policies, make them human focused, human centered, make them work for human beings without compromising our security. In fact, by doing this, by making security policies that work the way humans work, we actually make our systems more secure, not less secure. This is what everybody's dealing with. We're all familiar with this. This is what's so frustrating. You set up a new account on a new system, and it's got opinions about your password, and that password's not good enough. We have these rules about passwords, and you can't have spaces in your password. Your password can't end with a number. I mean, absolutely crazy stuff. When I see things like this, like look at that one there in the lower right. Your password has to not contain spaces. Your password has to not start with a question mark. Excuse me? Why these rules about passwords? Speaking as a CTO, I can tell you that when I see this, what I see is badly designed software. I see software with many security vulnerabilities. If a question mark at the beginning of a password breaks the software, that software probably has lots of problems. But apart from those software design considerations, strictly from the user point of view, all of this stuff is just maddening, difficult to deal with, impossible for a human being to deal with. And human beings have evolved strategies to deal with this. And those strategies are what are making our systems less secure. There is a maxim, I'm sure you've heard me talk about this, those regulars. There's a maxim that we hear in cybersecurity that you have to balance usability with security. The idea is that as security goes up, our systems become less usable, less user-friendly, more difficult for the users. And if we want to make our systems very easy for the users, well, that's going to reduce our security. So we have to find the balance of mediocre security and horrible usability. That's what people seem to be aiming for. I don't agree with this. I don't believe that this is true, and I don't think we should be balancing usability and security. I think we should be achieving security by promoting usability. I believe that when you have unusable security, what you actually have is no security at all, because people will work around bad security rules. When you force users to jump through silly hoops, they don't jump through the hoops, they go around the hoops. They do things like this guy. I've shared this, I share and shame this guy all the time. This is, as my regulars know, this is the missile alert system in Hawaii. They made the news a few years ago for accidentally sending a text message to every resident in the state saying, the nukes are coming, duck and cover. Freaked a lot of people out, very embarrassing, pointed to some real policy and procedure problems at this organization. Not the only policy and procedure problem they have. You know what I'm looking at here, right? That is, yes, indeed, that is a password on a Post-it note on a monitor in a photograph that was printed in newspapers around the country. This is what users do when you force them to do inhuman password policies. They do things like this. They write them down on sticky notes and they stick them on the computer. This is what people do. If you have an unusable password policy, you have an insecure password policy. So what can we, this is the typical thing. This is what drives these kinds of things. These are the rules that we're all very accustomed to. In fact, these rules have been so widely adopted in healthcare that there is a common misconception that HIPAA requires these rules. HIPAA requires no such thing. Remember, HIPAA is very old. It's very technology neutral. It has very little specifically to say about how you should manage passwords. It says you must have a policy for managing passwords. You got to be thinking about it. You have to have a plan. You have to be proactive. But it doesn't specifically enumerate specific rules that you're required to follow for passwords. So these rules, although they're almost universally enforced today in healthcare, they were never required by HIPAA. And these rules are actually the problem with our security policies. This is Bill Burr. He worked at the National Institute of Standards and Technology, and he is responsible for putting some of those rules into the NIST standards. These were NIST standards for a number of years. Bill looks back on that time and he says that was a mistake. I don't want to blame this guy. This is a very smart guy who cares very much about security and has done a lot for our industry and for all industries to help improve our cybersecurity. But at the time when these rules were written, those are the best ideas that we had. So this was the best advice that we could give people, to have special characters and numbers and letters and changing your passwords every 90 days. Bill looks back and says that was a mistake. Based on what we know now, based on actual evidence, based on actual research, we've learned that those rules are ineffective and make our security posture worse. So let's talk about now, if we're going to throw those rules away, I don't want to just go into complete anarchy. What are the new rules that we're going to follow to make our password policy more secure? And there are a few steps that I'm going to share with you, and we're going to go into the details here together. And then again, remember, I'm going to be sharing this with you in the model password language document that you'll be able to download at the end of the webinar to actually put these new rules into practice, into documented practice at your healthcare organization. First of all, we've always known that we've got to be educating our users, and I think we need to be doing more to educate our users, and we need to be educating our users about the modern evidence-based password practices. We've also got to just start reducing our reliance on passwords. We want to make systems that are more resilient so that when users' passwords are inevitably compromised, it will pose less risk to our organization. So we're going to talk a little bit about what we can do to just reduce our reliance on passwords. We've got to eliminate these counterproductive policies that users work around, these hoops that users go around instead of through. We've also got to, one effective thing we can do is prevent our users from using passwords that are known to be insecure because their password has already been swept up in a past data breach and is published, available for sale to hackers on the dark web. We can prevent that. And we've got to give users better tools, better technology to help them manage the passwords that they've got to deal with, because if we don't give them good tools, they will invent bad tools. If we don't give them good, secure password management systems, they will create their own. They will have Post-it notes on their monitor. They will have unencrypted spreadsheets on their desktop. I have seen users email themselves a list of their passwords so that they always have their passwords at their fingertips. Let's start by talking about educating our users. When we hire a new employee at our organization, this is true in healthcare, this is true at every modern company today. What do we do on day one? We set them up with all of these accounts, and we give them basically the keys to the kingdom. That we give them access to our email systems, to our file systems. We give them access to a workstation. We give them access to shared files. We give them access to cloud services. And we just hand over no, we don't hand over the keys to the kingdom. What do? We set up all of these things and we say, go make your own keys. And we don't give them any guidance on what they should be doing to create a good, secure key for these systems. And so we end up with highly sensitive, highly valuable systems that are protected by nothing more than one password chosen by one untrained user. And we need to start giving them more guidance. At my company, at Matterform, and at my company in Mexico, MediCheck, day one of training is password security. The first thing we do is we train people how to create a secure password. There are three factors. We've talked about this before. There are three factors that make a secure passphrase, and it's not complexity and composition rules and things like that. It's actually very simple. It's length, randomness, and uniqueness. The longer the password, the better, as long as it incorporates a random element. But then the third one is really the most important. It's really what I like to focus on when we're doing training with employees. It's the importance of a unique password. And almost nobody talks about this. This is almost never discussed. And you can really move the needle on your password security just by talking about this. It's so important that our users create a brand new password that has never been used anyplace else. Because if we don't tell them that, they're going to use their LinkedIn password. All of our LinkedIn passwords have been breached. If we don't tell them, they're going to use their Dropbox password or their MySpace password. Maybe you've forgotten your MySpace password, but the dark web remembers your MySpace password. MySpace has been breached. LinkedIn has been breached. Adobe has been breached. All of these organizations have already been attacked by cyber criminals. Their passwords have been breached. And I'm not worried about your MySpace account, right? It's not your MySpace account that I'm worried about criminals getting into. I'm worried about all the other systems where you're using the same password, because hackers don't need to guess your users' passwords. They can look them up on the dark web as easily as looking them up in a phone book. And that's what they do. Lots and lots of cyber attacks come from these, we call them credential stuffing attacks. The easiest way for a hacker, I don't even like to call it hacking, because hacking requires skill and creativity. All they have to do is download a database of dark web passwords and just try them out on your system. Just aim an automated process at your system and they will eventually get in if users are reusing passwords. So educating users about the importance of unique passwords at our organization, super, super important. I'm going to pause for breath and see if there's any questions in the chat box here. Any questions about unique passwords and how to do that? Almost any password. I mean, just about any password, regardless of their complexity rules or even their length, is going to be better than a long, complex password with upper and lowercase letters and special characters that's been reused. It just doesn't matter. Remember, they don't have to guess the password. Complexity will not protect you from the risk of reused passwords. So this is one that's really important. This is what we talk about on day one of training, educating our users about this. The other important thing to do is to reduce our reliance on passwords. A password alone should not cause a data breach at our organization. A huge number of data breaches are caused simply by password credential compromise and just people logging in. Again, don't even like to call it hacking. They're just logging into systems and downloading the data that they want because they look like an authorized user with an authorized password. This is why multi-factor authentication is so valuable. So I hope that all of you have already been working on multi-factor on all of your systems. All of your internet accessible sensitive systems need to be protected with multi-factor authentication. Something you know, that password, something you have, usually a pre-registered smartphone that the user has control of, and that the user guards so zealously. That's one of the great things about using a phone as your second factor token. People keep a close watch on their phones, and if they do lose their phones, they know about it right away. So that's what's so great about multi-factor authentication. If, or rather, when your users' passwords are inevitably compromised, multi-factor authentication means that password alone will not be causing a data breach at your organization. Where to focus multi-factor authentication? As I said, critical internet-facing systems need multi-factor authentication. The one that's commonly overlooked is email. For some reason, people think that email is, oh, it's just email. There's nothing important, nothing sensitive in there. First of all, there is a lot of important sensitive information in your email. Second of all, email tends to be the keys to the kingdom, the way to get into all of your other systems. If somebody gains access to your email account, they can reset passwords on other systems. They can impersonate you with your staff. Very bad things can happen if somebody can gain access, if somebody can log in to your email system. So your email system absolutely should be protected. Another place that's also commonly overlooked is VPN systems. I see a real false sense of security around VPN systems. A lot of IT people think that the VPN protects us because it's encrypted. Sure, it's encrypted, but it's only as strong as that one password chosen by one user. So multi-factor authentication is really important on your VPN systems and also on any kind of remote desktop protocol endpoints that you may have. If those are accessible just with a password, it's just a matter of time before they're breached. At the beginning of the pandemic, we saw a huge upsurge in the number of RDP brute force attacks. Hackers, criminals just logging into people's remote desktop access endpoints just by trying passwords until they get in. It's just a matter of time if you don't have multi-factor authentication turned on. And then, of course, any kind of cloud-based system, any kind of, if you have a cloud-based EHR, cloud-based line of business software, any type of software that is accessible on the web, any internet accessible system, that's what really needs to be protected with multi-factor authentication. And remember, MFA is one of the only ways to really protect yourself from the most common threat facing organizations, which is social engineering. Most data breaches, most cyber attacks are started by a social engineering attack. These social engineering threats are extremely sophisticated. Yes, we need to train users to recognize them and respond to them correctly, but these social engineering attacks are launched by sophisticated, well-funded scam artists who are experts at psychological manipulation, and they will fool clever, smart, careful people. Being fooled by a social engineering attack does not mean you were stupid, does not mean you were careless. They will fool smart, careful people. So we need to have multi-factor authentication to protect our systems when that happens. Question here, story regarding email and MFA. This is from Jim. My father is suffering a stroke and subsequent memory loss. I needed to take over all his finances. Once I had access to email, I was able to gain access to all his online accounts, banking, investment, credit card, etc. Made it very easy for me, but certainly not very secure. Yes, very convenient for you, Jim. Also very convenient for any attacker who wants to gain access to that stuff. I imagine, Jim, that you were able to get the kind of access that would enable you to do transfers, maybe even withdrawals. Goodness only knows what you could do once you have access to somebody's email. If I shudder to think what somebody could do if they were able to get into my email. I've had the same email account, folks, for more than 30 years, michael@matterform.com. I've had that email address for 30 years. I've had it on the current system that I use. I think 15 or 20 years worth of email in there. It's very valuable to me. It's very useful. I refer to it frequently. I'm often going back to very old email messages, and it's very useful. So it's equally useful to any attacker who wants to cause harm. So yeah, email is so important to protect with multi-factor authentication. Jim, the whole question of how do you create a continuity plan so that trusted family members can access your accounts even though you've created an MFA system to protect it. That's a whole other topic, but it's something that we do need to be thinking about, and frankly, it's something we should be talking with our elderly parents about. That's something that's on my mind as well. Somebody asked me recently, so I wanted to bring this up. Somebody asked me, so well, once I have multi-factor authentication in place, and you say that reduces the risk of the passwords. Well, is it then does that mean it's okay for me to just use password 1234 on all of my accounts? You've said that multi-factor protects me if somebody gets my password. So can I use a terrible password on my accounts now that I have MFA? I don't advise it. It's sort of like this, folks. Would you ever say, well, I've just installed a burglar alarm. There's a lot of crime in my neighborhood. A lot of my neighbors have been broken into, and so I've installed a burglar alarm. Now that I have a burglar alarm, I don't lock my door anymore. Of course you don't do that. Of course you want all of the defenses that you can have. So of course, multi-factor authentication, it reduces the risk the way a burglar alarm reduces the risk. It doesn't mean that you're going to give up on all the other security controls that you're already using. MFA does not eliminate the need for good password practices. It does give an additional layer of protection, but it doesn't eliminate the need for all of the other good stuff that you should continue doing in your security program. This is the single most frustrating dialog box for any busy professional, any busy medical professional, any busy doctor to get when they're trying to start their day of work. You got to change your password. This is something that we've been advising people to do for a number of years, requiring people to change their passwords every 90 days. The idea is that if somebody gets a hold of your password, we can at least keep a lid on it. They'll only be able to gain access to the systems for 90 days. Folks, 90 days is nothing. As soon as a criminal gains access, as soon as a criminal has a password, they don't need 90 days to get your stuff. They have your stuff in 90 seconds. So it really doesn't help that much. Also, when you force people to change their password every 90 days, you know what they do. You know what you do. We all do it. You change the number at the end. You change the question mark to an exclamation mark. If a criminal has the old password, they can almost always very quickly guess the new password. This is not effective, and this is a counterproductive policy that causes people to behave in a very predictable manner, to work around this policy with those password composition tricks that we all have, writing them down on Post-it notes, things like that. As I said, this was never required by HIPAA. It was for a brief time recommended by NIST, but the latest version of NIST, particularly Special Publication 863B, Digital Identity Guidelines, the new NIST standards specifically state, there on the second paragraph, Verifiers, your systems, should not require memorized secrets, passwords to be changed arbitrarily every 90 days. You should not do that. The language is very strong here. The recommendation is not that you don't need to require this. The recommendation is you should not do this, because it doesn't just not help. It actually makes your systems less secure. You should not impose composition rules, complexity rules, not just that it's optional. You should not do it. You should not require composition rules. You should not force people to change their passwords periodically, because it will make your security posture worse. It doesn't just not help. This was a great presentation at RSA, the big security conference 2 years ago, I want to say. This was Alex Weinert, Director of Identity Security at Microsoft, and he said password expiration policies are injurious. They are not just not helpful, they actually reduce your security posture. Password complexity rules also reduce your security posture. You will get pushback on this. You will tell people, well, people will tell you, I think we have to do this. Once you convince them that you don't have to do it, they'll come back to you and say, well, it's still a good idea. And then they'll come back and say, well, it can't hurt, right? No, it does hurt. Research shows that it does reduce your security posture, and you should not be doing these things. You should not be doing it. Another thing that we can do for our password security is eliminating or banning passwords that we know have been breached. A lot of you probably know this website. Certainly if you've come to my password webinars, you know this website. This is haveibeenpwned.com, P-W-N-E-D. Hacker lingo for you've been compromised, you've been had, you've been owned, you've been pwned. And if you go to this website, you can pull it up on your phone right now if you like, put in your email address, and you will see all of the data breaches in which your passwords have been compromised. Doesn't mean you did anything wrong. I'm in here. If I put my email address in there, you can put my email address in there and see all of the data breaches where I've been compromised. You'll see that my LinkedIn password has been breached. You'll see that my Adobe password has been breached. I'm in 7 or 8 known data breaches where the password I was using on that system has been compromised. And that's why I need to use unique passwords on new systems so that hackers can't use that data against me. Not only can criminals access those dark web databases, we can access those databases too, and we can use those databases to improve our security posture. There are easy to use systems and tools that you can configure on your software, on your network, that will scan these dark web databases for passwords known to have been breached and prevent people from reusing them on your systems. If you can make sure that somebody's LinkedIn password connected to their email address is not going to be used to protect your EHR, not going to be used to protect email on your systems. The same person who publishes this website has an API that's available. It can be integrated with Active Directory. It can be integrated with Microsoft 365. You can use these types of tools to prevent people from using passwords that are known to have been breached. I said we shouldn't force people to change their passwords every 90 days, but we should always require people to change their passwords if there's any evidence of compromise. If there's any reason to believe that somebody's password has been leaked, we need to change that password. If a user believes that they may have fallen for a phishing scam, the first thing to do is for that user to change their password. And this is a pro tip that I always recommend. This is something, this can be very effective. We should be looking at our authentication logs. And if somebody has a failed MFA challenge, that could be evidence of a compromise. At the very least, if somebody logs in with a password, then we give them the multi-factor challenge and they stop. They don't log in. Okay, we've stopped the access. We should alert the user at this point, hey, somebody who knows your password tried to log in. They weren't able to, but they tried to, and they know your password. Was it you? Because maybe it was you. Maybe you were busy. Maybe you didn't have your phone with you, and you just aborted the login attempt, and you decided you were going to do it later when you were more prepared for that MFA challenge. But it might be indication of an attacker trying to gain access to systems. An attacker who we stopped successfully with multi-factor authentication, but we should alert the user, somebody knows your password, and maybe you should change your password. So that's something that we can get into our password policies. This is something that we can implement in our HIPAA log reviews, an automated process to review authentication logs and do these types of alerts, that can meet our requirements for HIPAA login monitoring. There's a login monitoring HIPAA specification. Doing this will meet that HIPAA specification and can dramatically improve our security posture by getting users involved in this and ensuring that people are changing their passwords when there is evidence of a compromise. Finally, something we should be doing with our users is we need to be giving them the tools and the technology to manage their passwords. We're not going to get rid of passwords, and that almost every month you'll see a press release. People are asking me about them all the time. Oh, this company is going to eliminate passwords. We're going to stop using passwords. Apple recently announced a system that's going to eliminate passwords. Well, not just yet, it's not. It maybe someday, but passwords are going to be with us for a while, and a lot of your users are dealing with dozens, if not hundreds, of passwords. We want them to use unique passwords. How are they going to do that if we don't give them the tools to manage them securely? So this is where password managers or password vaults come into play. Password manager is simply an encrypted database that stores the passwords. And there's all kinds of great solutions out there. If anybody wants to chime in the chat box with software tools that they've used, there's a number of different solutions here. I don't like to give specific product recommendations here. Everybody's needs are different, but you're going to be looking for a good, secure, encrypted password manager. Most people like to see a password manager that can automatically autofill passwords into websites, even into phone apps. People like to see password managers that can synchronize across devices, things like that. So there's lots of useful tools for that. Yeah, Cindy. Yeah, healthcare is 10 to 15 years behind in technology. So even if the private sector companies eliminate passwords, that doesn't mean EHRs will. Yeah, that's right. As soon as passwords go away, start the clock, because 15 years later, healthcare might be ready to adopt that technology. That's I don't know if I want to laugh or cry at that observation, but that's very true. But anyway, I really believe, a lot of organizations will allow people to use password managers. Fortunately, the days are behind us when the IT department thought that password managers were a security risk and actually banned them. We used to see that, people not allowed to use password managers. So most organizations at least allow it. Some of the IT companies, some of the IT staff will use password managers for their stuff. But we forget, it's not even the IT people who are struggling with this. It's the other people. It's the line employees. It's the receptionists. It's the non-technical people. It's the people who do a lot of work with billing portals and insurance reimbursements. Those people are juggling dozens, maybe hundreds of passwords. Those people really need password manager software to deal with this. And I think that every organization should have, as part of onboarding, here's how to make a password and here's how to use your new password manager software. We expect you to use your password manager software. I think we need to start requiring the use of password manager software. It's time for us to be providing leadership on that and stop expecting users to figure these things out on their own. We've got to be giving them guidance. And Mary says, yeah, you'll still have to remember a password for your password manager software. Exactly. And any kind of passwordless system, passwords aren't going away. There's always going to be at least a few passwords in your life that you're going to have to remember. And there's just no way around that. And yes, you're going to have a password for your password manager software. Important point to make, and I'm sure you're thinking of this too, Mary, that password needs to be a really good password. There is a risk, of course, of keeping all of your passwords in one place, right? It makes that password manager an attractive target for any criminals. But I say put your eggs in one basket and then watch the hell out of that basket. So that password manager software, that's the one that truly needs a long, random, totally unique password that has never been and never will be used on any other system. It's only for that password manager software. And yeah, if you lose that password, you lose all passwords. So that is the password that is 100% committed to memory and probably written down on a piece of paper and stored in your safety deposit box or wherever you keep your will and your title and things like that. Those highly important, sensitive documents. Going back to Jim's point, this is part of your family data continuity programs, so that when it's time to help an elderly parent and take over accounts for them, you know where to find those types of access. You know how to find that master password that's locked away securely someplace. We should all be thinking about that as just in our personal lives as well as in our business lives, because that password manager software, super, super critical. Great stuff, folks. Any other comments? I love seeing your comments, folks. Your comments are oxygen to me. I really appreciate them. Here I am in my home office, as I'm sure many of you are. Sometimes it feels like I'm speaking to a wall. So it's with your comments that really energizes me and makes these much more fun, and I hope more valuable for you folks. Mary asks, what do you suggest for employees? Can you elaborate, Mary? What specifically are you wondering about? Where should they store that one big password? You know, this is a difficult one, and we've struggled with this at Matterform about where we're going to store that. Right now, we're a very small team, and so we're able to do it on a pretty ad hoc basis that kind of works. It's hard to know how to do it at scale. I'm curious if Jim has any thoughts about this. This is a password that I would prefer not to have stored online anywhere, right? This is exactly the sort of thing that I would like to have air gapped off of my network. That has to be, you have to actually come and open up a safe and get it in the box, right? I would like to have it separated from the online systems. This is the last thing I want to see breached by an online cybersecurity attack. So, how do you do that in a multi-location environment with hundreds of employees? It's difficult to say. I think we're probably going to have any kind of solution at scale really is going to involve digital storage. I don't think there's any way around that. It's got to be accessible. You're hiring people every day. You've got to be updating this all the time. It's not going to be feasible to be opening a safe and writing it down in the secret place. So there's got to be a way. We've got to have some kind of risk management approach to this. All I can say, I don't have a good answer for this, and I don't know if there's a good best practice that anybody can recommend. All I can say is that it needs the utmost protection at our organization. For small organizations, for small companies, I really do think that a safety deposit box at the bank is smart. For larger companies who have to do this at scale, it's going to have to be some kind of digital vault that just has unbelievably secure protections with real separation of duties, making sure that only certain people have access to that database. We know who has it, and we control it super, super tightly. Business continuity risk of somebody losing their master password. It could take weeks to reset all cloud services passwords for just one employee. Agree completely. Although I will say this, I don't think it's smart. There are some password manager software out there that makes it possible for supervisors or business owners to see, review, and access employee passwords. And for this business continuity risk, exactly for this, the idea being that if the employee loses access, there needs to be somebody with backup who can get access to all of those passwords. So trying to address that business continuity risk. I don't know if I like that, because it introduces another risk. It introduces a risk of a lack of accountability. When you have a rogue employee, when an employee starts doing bad things and they're doing it under their login, remember, insider misuse is a serious threat at every organization. It's one we have to think about. If the employee can plausibly say, hey, that wasn't me, my manager has all of my passwords, it was probably him. That's a bad situation to be in. Part of the purpose of passwords and keeping passwords secret, even from supervisors, is to create accountability and non-disputability, so that if only the employee knows the password, only the employee could be responsible for whatever was done under that login. So creating, trying to address the business continuity risk, reduces what you've done for the accountability issues. These are tricky, difficult things. I'm sorry, I don't have good answers on some of these things. The conversation continues to evolve here. These are great questions, and I love this. I love questions that I don't have good answers to. But let's keep the conversation going and talk more and more about this. Seems like key secret risk is very similar to key person risk. I'm not sure exactly what you're saying there, Jim. I'd love if you elaborate on that. Interesting stuff, really interesting stuff. Give us another comment there, Jim. I'm going to just move on. Love to hear more about that, or maybe we can talk offline. But anyway, these are things that we can do right now. We've talked about some of the challenges still ahead of us as long as passwords are still with us. But these 5 things are things that we can do now. Educating users about the importance, primarily about the importance of a unique password, a password that has never been used anyplace else. Reducing our reliance on passwords alone, primarily with multi-factor authentication, really helps. Keeping in mind that you don't throw away your deadbolt just because you bought a burglar alarm. Eliminating these counterproductive password policies, particularly forcing people to reset their password every 90 days. Pairing with that, not letting them use passwords that are known to have been breached, and then giving them better tools to manage their passwords in a secure manner. If a single person is the sole owner of a critical secret, they are a key person risk. Absolutely. Well, and this goes back to, actually, Jim, this goes back to email. I think that the way most organizations deal with this is the email becomes the keys to the kingdom. And so we do always, as business owners, as supervisors, we do maintain the ability to get into our employees' email accounts. So that is sort of the one point where we keep that kind of supervision. What's nice about that is that gives us the ability to get into an employee's email. It gives us the ability to reset passwords on their other systems, but it creates that audit trail. Now we can see that, yes, somebody did an action under this employee's account immediately after changing the password. That creates a bit of an audit trail that helps us document that maybe it wasn't the employee, it was a supervisor. The supervisor changed the password and then somebody logged in from that supervisor's IP address. It's under the employee's account, but now we can see that maybe it was the supervisor acting there in an authorized manner. So that helps us preserve some of the employee accountability stuff that we want to do there. So yeah, the key person risk, I agree completely. These are really interesting questions. I really thank you guys for bringing them up. It makes it more interesting for me and gives me things to think about also. I want to share a couple of other resources with you folks. That's about all the content that I have for you today, and we're nearing the top of the hour here. But let's keep the conversation going. Let's stay in touch. Please keep coming to our webinars and keep asking these great questions. So some resources I want to share with you. I think most of you probably know that I have a weekly video series, HIPAA for Humans. We publish every Tuesday on LinkedIn, on YouTube, and a few other places. The easiest way to stay in touch with us is to follow me on LinkedIn. So scan that with your phone, follow me on LinkedIn if you don't already, and watch for our videos, HIPAA for Humans, realistic cybersecurity advice for healthcare, every Tuesday. Just 3 to 5 minute videos where I share quick tips and ideas about how to improve your cybersecurity and compliance posture, real bite-sized stuff. Wanted to announce that we have a, actually, you know what? That reminds me, I have some, I can give you the link right now. I think I've got that set up here. Let me share with you folks the HIPAA for Humans link. And this is the first time I've used this feature, folks. Give me feedback. Did you folks receive that? Do you see the handout or the action that I just shared with you? Yes, no? Again, yes, great. Okay, cool. So there's where you can follow me on LinkedIn and see our weekly videos. And then we've just recently launched a great new resource, HIPAA security awareness training for staff. And I partnered with Hook Security, the leader in psychological security and security awareness. They've already got a great library of really good cybersecurity awareness training that's just generally useful in any industry. They've already got a great platform for doing phishing simulations, to send simulated phishing attacks to employees and see who clicks on them and use that to educate people about how to recognize phishing attacks. And I partnered with them to create a HIPAA security awareness training program for staff. My goal was threefold with this training. I wanted it to be relevant. A lot of HIPAA security training is really designed for HIPAA security officers how to create a HIPAA compliance program. And it's full of information that's just way beyond what a doctor or a nurse or a receptionist needs to know to do their job. So I wanted this training to be relevant to the people who are actually going to be taking the training and not overburden them with a bunch of irrelevant stuff. I wanted it to be modern and evidence-based. Most security training out there has the terrible password advice. I hate putting people through training that trains them in the 1995 password rules. I want to give them the good information, the good modern evidence-based information. And then my third goal with this training was for it to not suck, because almost all of the training out there is terrible. People have been asking me for recommendations, and there was just nothing I could recommend. So we put this together, and I think we achieved those goals. If I may humbly say so, I think this is training that is relevant, that is modern, and it doesn't suck. It's about 20 minutes of video. It takes about 40 minutes for a person to go through it. There's a whole compliance platform so that you can use to track who's taken the training, who still needs to take the training. Cindy asks how much the training costs. It's very simple. Our base rate is $2 per user per month. And remember, that's the HIPAA security awareness training, cybersecurity training library, and the ongoing phishing security awareness training with phishing simulations. So that's available. Let me see if I can give you a link for that right now. And I've got two more things to share with you, so bear with me here. But I'm really excited about this new product, and I'd love your feedback. Anybody who would like to take a look at this, I'd love to see if you've got any ideas for improving it. We're going to continue working on this and making it better and better. Another resource that we have, I know that some of you have already seen this. This is the BYOD Blueprint. This is an ebook that I'd love to share with you, which explains how to implement bring your own device at your organization. Employees are bringing their personal smartphones to work. They're using those personal smartphones to access email. They're using it to access other company systems that have PHI and other sensitive data. It's a huge risk at our organizations that's largely overlooked. It can be managed. It is possible to let people use their personal device and to do it in a secure manner if you follow my BYOD Blueprint. If you don't do this, BYOD stands for Bring Your Own Disaster. Let's keep BYOD to be Bring Your Own Device. Get my ebook, the BYOD Blueprint. Tell you what you need to do, what kinds of security controls you want to implement on those employee devices, and also includes model language that you can use to create a BYOD policy at your organization so that you have a documented HIPAA compliant policy around personal smartphones at your organization. So that link there, let me share that with you. You can take a look at that. There's some more information on the website. And then finally, the thing I mentioned at the very beginning, I've got model language for your password policy. So we've been evolving for a number of years now, password documentation that follows these practices that I've already shared with you about the importance of uniqueness, eliminating the password complexity stuff, giving guidance on how to create a long, random, unique password, allowing for password managers, things like that, and eliminating all of those counterproductive policies. So this is model policy language that's free to everybody here on our chat, on our webinar today. And yes, Jim, I am absolutely saying that we should not be imposing composition rules. We should be talking to people about long, random, and unique. And this policy language will help you with that. And by the way, there's a strategic way of tackling this. I do not recommend, for example, that we just turn off the password reset rules on our systems. Users will love that, but don't give it away. This is also my philosophy as a parent. You never give away the ice cream. The kid's got to clean his room first, right? And then he gets the ice cream. So same thing. Don't just give away the password reset. This is an opportunity to have a conversation with our users and say, good news, we're no longer going to require you to change your password every 90 days. And there will be raucous applause when you announce that. Follow that right up with, because we're asking you for your help. We're asking you to follow our new password rules. And we're going to do some real training about what makes a good, secure password, or better, passphrase that is long, random, and unique. So yes, no more complexity, no more composition rules. They are counterproductive. But this is an opportunity by removing that burden from our users. This is an opportunity to build some goodwill with our users. This is a chance for IT to finally be the hero. Yay, IT, making our lives easier with human-centered cybersecurity policies and treating us like adults and collaborators and co-owners of the security process at our company by involving us in this decision and so that we can all pitch in and create good, long, random, unique passwords at our organization. I have found that if you pitch this right, people actually get enthusiastic about it. I remember somebody was telling me he was working from home and he had to pull out his phone. He had to type in this really, really long password, and then he had to pull out his phone to do this multi-factor authentication. And a friend who was watching him work said, "Wow, what's with that long, long password and that? And that what you need your phone just to log in?" He said, "Yeah, we are a security first company." He felt like he was a secret agent or something with super high security. He was proud of it. He was proud of how seriously his company was taking security, and he was bragging about it with his friends about how secure, how James Bond level of security at his organization. So good stuff there. And really, if it's pitched correctly, you will get people on board with it. It's not exactly, training is critical. It's really, and you know what, it's really a culture issue. It's about getting people interested in this, excited about this, and on board with the training that you want to share with them, because there is no automated way to do this. As Jim says, it's really about training and culture at your organization. So folks, I hope this is helpful for you, and I hope that you'll continue to join me at our webinars. I hope you'll continue to share them with your friends, with your colleagues, and invite people here. We will have a recording of this webinar available later on today. I think you'll all receive an email automatically about that. Please share that with your colleagues who can benefit from this. Share this with the IT leaders at your organization and also with the executives at your organization. Cybersecurity is not an IT issue. Cybersecurity is an executive level, board level issue. The board, the executives, the leaders of the organization need to take responsibility for this, need to be informed about it. Supported by IT, yes, but it's not IT who should be driving these decisions. It really needs to be happening at that leadership level. And trainings like this, I always strive to speak in business terms, in business lingo, avoiding techno jargon and compliance babble. I hope we've achieved that today to help you make passwords that work for human beings. Folks, thanks again for joining me here today. It was really, really fun webinar for me. I hope it was for you as well. And I'll see you next time. Thanks, everybody.